Good afternoon and aloha. We're just outside with the family, taking some pictures and comforting the family. Things happen, in our community like that. And so that's why we're here with all of our young people and of course our family, friends and parents and aunties and uncles. As we continue to stay strong, it's all about prevention and awareness now. And continue to work closely, whatever we can do to support the effort. We have a great team in place. Our local team, working with the state team, and everybody collectively trying their very best to address this issue.
Nancy Dealey is the Suicide Prevention Coordinator for the State of Hawaii Department of Health.
But suicide is the first leading cause of death for people in Hawaii ages 15 to 44. That's a large age span, and it's really significant that suicide is number one, and most people don't really realize that. And the other data point I'm just going to say is one person dies by suicide every 2 days in Hawaii. We developed 5 strategies that we think are really critically important to address suicide, and they are public awareness, training, survivor support, policy, and research. So some of our major initiatives with public awareness includes the Suicide Prevention Month activities like you're doing today with the Prevention Walk, and there'll be an Out of the Darkness Walk later in October in Kauai. So we are having also our statewide Out of the Darkness Walk on Oahu, and that will be next week. So basically, every island, every county in Hawaii is going to have some walk for suicide this month. Okay, some of the other things that are coming up. We're having a conference in April from the 10th through the 12th. We are always working to expand our partnerships. We are going to be working in the next year or two on really expanding this through healthcare providers. We also now work with the military, but we want to expand that, and they've been really wonderful in helping us with trainings. So in addition to expanding our partnerships, we're also working with to expand the grief groups. We are going in this year to get funding for youth services. Last legislative session, we were able to get $25,000 for youth programs on Maui. They're in the planning process right now, but the next session we're going in and we're going to ask for youth service money for Kauai and Hawaii Island. So thank you so much for having me here today. It's really been an honor. Thank you.
and not just currently, but also to give us the perspective of what we've been doing over the years, because she's been involved in it over the years. Gina Kauai has long been the chairperson for the Prevent Suicide Kauai Task Force, and somehow she did talk me into doing it for her a couple of years ago. So now she's not, but she is still our expert on the island as far as how suicide and suicide attempts are affecting us, the kinds of efforts that we're making to prevent those from happening, the kinds of things that we are doing in order to deal with the pain and the suffering that occurs after someone has died by suicide. Suicide and what occurs around suicide and before, during and after is a complex set of issues. Things are so tied together around what affects people individually as each person contemplates suicide, determines how to deal with it, how to respond, what steps to take. It also is the thing that the complexity of that is what is affecting our dealing with it on our efforts to go forward and address it. So I'm going to have Gina Kauai come up and talk to us about the complex issue that is suicide. Thank you, Gina.
Good afternoon. It's always a pleasure and an honor and a humbling experience to come up and talk to you about one subject that I'm probably most passionate about, and that's suicide, suicide healing, suicide survivorship, suicide hope. My journey with suicide began 54 years ago. At the age of 4, you can figure out my age now, my father died by suicide. And I will never forget the call that my mom got. It's as though it happened yesterday. 25 years later, I got another call. You see, 4 months earlier, my brother told me he was going to end his life. And I remember when we had that conversation, I remember thinking, how could we have this conversation when you know the significant impact that our dad's death had on our life? You see, back then, 54 years ago, there weren't services like we have today that provides bereavement support to children in our community. We didn't talk about things like resiliency or hopelessness or mental illness. And sadly, my brother ended his life. And so when I heard the song, Somewhere Over the Rainbow, I thought about something that my daughter said to me a couple of months after he died. We were standing outside, and she looked up and she saw a rainbow, and she said, "There's Uncle Butch's slide to heaven." You see, that's what hope is. And that's really what our efforts are about. You see, the organization that I work for, that is part of my love work, and I also have the privilege of working full-time with the Kauai Police Department in domestic violence, is that we see all of the issues that affect our community and affect someone. But there's still a lot of stigma around mental illness and what that means. So today I'm going to task you with something before we go on with what the efforts and the journey of the task force has been and what our efforts are. But when I'm out in the community now, I realize something. You see, when we talk to our legislators and we talk to the policymakers, we talk to people in the community, if I were to stand here and tell you that I have diabetes, would any of you be uncomfortable with that? And be honest, go ahead and raise your hand. If I told you I needed to stop for 1 second because I needed to take my insulin, would any of you be uncomfortable? Now let's switch things up. What if I stood here and told you I was paranoid schizophrenic, or I was manic depressive, or I had bipolar disorder? would you start to look and think of me a little differently? And what if I told you I had to stop because I needed to take my meds, because standing up here created a lot of anxiety and I needed to calm down? Would you think of me differently? Let me educate you on something. Diabetes is a disorder of your pancreas, basically, right? It's not working, doesn't manage your sugar levels, right? Well, mental illness is a chemical imbalance of your brain. And medication helps to balance those chemicals so we can live normal, healthy lives. And while I'm not diagnosed with any of those mental health challenges, what I am, like you, and everyone in this room and on this earth, that I've come to realize is that my brain is part of my body, and that we've got to stop separating that and making mental illness this scary, unbelievable thing when it's a chemical imbalance that affects our body. See, that's what hope is. And that's part of what the task force is. And if you want information, we have an amazing resource table there. See, in 2008, prior to that, and I'd grown up on this island, some people didn't really talk about it. But on a whole, it gave us a very tragic gift in 2008. While we had 6 people die that month, that was in October, we had 3 teenagers in Honolulu die. Now that year, we had 16 suicide deaths, and I responded to every single one of them as a grief counselor. You see, when somebody dies by suicide, it's not just a pebble in the pond that affects the family. It affects the family, it affects the community, it affects our island, and it affects our state. And one of the sad realities is that per capita, Kauai has had the most suicide deaths, and most suicides are preventable. And so the task force was established in 2008, and we work hand in hand our island with the state, because we know that we can't do this by ourselves. So what are we doing? Well, I want you to know the most important thing that we're doing is raising awareness. With awareness comes knowledge. You see, I just did that when I asked you about diabetes versus a chemical imbalance in my brain. See, with awareness, then we have hope. And with hope, we have prevention. And with prevention, we have intervention. And really, in a nutshell, when you think about all of those things, what does that mean? It means that every single person on this island can be a lifesaver. You see, it doesn't take much. Each one of us can learn to recognize somebody that's at risk. And those signs can be very simple. Not everybody has them. But learning to recognize the signs is the first thing that each one of us can do. And that's what the task force does. We have people that are trained to go out and do these trainings free of charge to anybody in the community. We need 10 people. And we will do a training so that people can recognize somebody at risk. Every single one of the police recruits are trained to recognize someone at risk. That was one of the accomplishments of our task force, is to make sure that the very people that are out in our community, whether they're investigating a crime or they're providing immediate support to somebody in crisis, that they know what to do, and that's to ask the question. And the question is, are you thinking of suicide? We don't want to ask that question, because what if they say yes? Well, guess what? See, here again is where there's the hope. In every effort that every one of our task force members does is to honor the people that have died, so that we continue to work toward to be that lifesaver, to save that one person. Now, I'm not one to get on my political rally, but today I am. And the only reason I'm saying that is because it is a pivotal year on our island. It's pivotal because we have a whole bunch of new people coming in. It's a change, it's a time of change. And I'm asking you that as part of your journey in saving lives is to get out and vote, because then we can hold these officials accountable. We can ask them to work for us, not just to walk with us, but to work with us. Because guess what? It starts here locally. They will bring the word back to the state. The state will bring it back to Washington, and that's what we need for change. We need to be a voice and to say, we will not have anybody else on our island die by suicide, because everybody will be trained. Everybody will learn to recognize somebody at risk. Everybody will be ears and eyes and a lifesaver, and everybody will do their part. And we'll be bringing hope right along with us.